Red braised pork is a Chinese classic. It features slow-cooked pork belly in a sweet and savory sauce. It's shockingly cheap to make, and it's easier than it looks. And I'll show you how to make these perfectly curly scallions. So let's get going, because today we're making Welcome. So this dish is really sort of a masterclass on the power of braising fattier or tougher cuts of meat. And since I had a ton of leftover pork belly from our last episode on the porchetta sandwich, I figured this would be a great opportunity to make one of my favorite dishes that I rarely get to make. So we're going to start off with a nice skin-on pork belly. And if you have the option, opt for the leanest one you can get your hands on. I'm just breaking this down into slightly larger than bite-sized cubes because these are going to shrink up quite a bit once they're braising. I find it somewhat important for this dish to find a pork belly with the skin still on. That's because the skin has a lot of collagen in it, which is going to break down as it's braising to really enrich the sauce and give us a really gelatinous, glossy end product. If you're not into eating the skin, it separates really easily in the end dish and you can just set it aside, or better yet, give it to your pup. She'll appreciate it. Alright, so the next step in our porky journey here is going to be to do a quick blanching of the meat. This is sort of a similar process to making like a Vietnamese pho or any kind of bone broth. It's going to help set and clean the meat a bit. It'll also help get rid of any of the stronger, less desirable flavors of the pork. Also, like any pho or bone broth, it's better to start in cold water and bring it up to temperature. That way it doesn't just shock the outside and lock in all those impurities that we want to allow to get out of the meat in the first place. So I'm just going to get it up to high heat so we can get to our boil a little bit quicker. And I'm also going to get in a splash of Shaoxing wine, which is a Chinese rice wine for cooking. It's said to help get rid of any undesirable flavors. And as we wait for that to come up to a boil, I'm just going to de-pork my cutting board here. Fun fact, this cutting board is made from rubber, and it's pretty cool. Once your pot reaches a boil, let it rip for a minute or two, and notice all the scum and impurities at the surface. Now, if you thought we could skip this step, is that really something you want in the final dish? Not I. Not I. So the final phase of the cleaning process is just going to be to gently wash each piece under cold water, so we can leave any last remnants of scum behind us. I like to use a paper towel to dry them off a bit so we can get a nice sear later on. Next, I'm going to prep our wok. We're going to start off on a medium-high heat, and I'm getting a bit of neutral oil in there. Today, I'm using avocado. I may have been a bit heavy-handed on the oil today, so I'm going to stand back a bit while these get going. This is also a good reason to dry the pork the best you can before it hits the heat. Once we start to get a little bit of color on one side, I'm going to add some rock sugar. I'm not entirely sure the science behind the difference between rock sugar and more refined sugar. If you know, leave a comment down below. But it's commonly found in Asian dishes like these, and I keep it on hand for when I make pho. But you can substitute it for regular sugar, no problem. Either way, it's going to turn into an almost caramel here and coat the pork, which will help get us a nice deep, rich flavor. At this stage, I'm going to stir fry in some ginger and garlic for our aromatics, and you can add some additional spices like star anise here, or maybe a whole scallion. Have some fun with it. Then I'm going to go in with about 4 tablespoons of a light, low sodium soy sauce, 3 or so tablespoons of a dark soy sauce for color, and 1/3 cup of Shaoxing wine, the same one we used to boil the pork. So just let these come together for a little bit, and you can feel free to add a little bit more dark soy sauce if you want some darker color. Once everything's nicely coated, I'm just going to add enough water to cover everything. If you find you have too much liquid after the braising is finished, just scoop some out, you'll be good to go. Then I'll set a timer for about 1 hour and turn our wok to low. That'll be enough time for the pork to get nice and tender, but not so done that it'll be falling apart. I wanted to do a fancy curly scallion presentation as a garnish, so here's the best way to make those super easy. I find it's better to use larger scallions for this, that way you can sort of fillet them in half way easier. Just take your knife and go right down the center, or just cut them in half straight away. And to get the cleanest pieces, you want to slide your knife back and through. That way you do less damage and the least amount of bruising, and you can get them nice and fine. But I'm going for sort of a medium thickness today. Then I'll throw them into an ice bath. As they sit, the fleshy part soaks up more water and expands more than the exterior, which gives us a nice curl. And the cold aspect helps them stay nice and crunchy. Then, last bit of garnish prep, I found these nice looking red chili peppers. I'm pretty sure they're Holland peppers, but they didn't really specify at the grocery store. Alright, our hour's up. Time to check on the pork. And it's looking pretty nice. I'd say it's nice and fork tender, but not completely disintegrating, which is exactly where we want it. So now we're gonna kick the heat up to high, and we're gonna let this thing boil and reduce for 15 to 20 minutes. And in the meantime, I'm gonna make a cornstarch slurry, which is gonna help us finish the sauce. Pretty simple, just bring together 1 part cornstarch to 2 parts water, mix it up, and you're good to go. In this case, we're probably gonna wind up adding about 2 tablespoons or so of the cornstarch slurry, and just kind of see how it goes from there. At this point, we just want to keep it moving for a minute, bring everything together, and then we're going to kill the heat. And look at that. Real quick before we assemble, if you guys are liking the background music, I write and produce it all myself, and it's available on streaming platforms under the artist name Jandre FM. And you can download the files for free on my Patreon. No sign up required. My channel isn't quite big enough for sponsors or anything, but over on Patreon, I'll be posting additional videos, recipes, behind the scenes, and more. So consider supporting my work on Patreon. I'll leave a link down below. And now back to the best part, the plating, or maybe the eating. I find the sauce level here to be a matter of preference. I've seen lots of versions of the dish that are lighter on the sauce, and I've also seen ones that are kind of swimming in it, so feel free to tailor it to your tastes. Nice and glossy from the collagen breakdown of the skin and the fat, but still plenty of lean meat to go around. All that's left to do is to add our fancy curly scallions, our Holland maybe peppers, and look at that. I think this might be the most luxurious pork in the world. Alright, let's see how it is. Alright, let's get some rice. That's the beauty of having it really sauced up. Some plain steamed rice is all you need. Wow. At the end of the day, it's a really simple dish, but every step comes through in the final flavor. From the aromatics, to the tenderness of the slow braising of the pork, and the subtle sweetness from the rock sugar. It's all super prominent and pretty perfect. Alright, we did it. Give a like, subscribe. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.